Welcome to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and I am, as most of you know, an author, the author of Chakras, The Magnificent Seven, Grief, When Will This Pain Ever End, and also Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say. I'm also a speaker, and I am a life transition coach. I help people who are dealing with the changes and the upheaval of life that sometimes can really throw you, and you just need someone to sit down with you and help you get your grounding back again. And that's what I do in my counseling coaching practice. I am very, very excited about this podcast. As most of you know, we are on every major podcast platform. We've got a Facebook page, an Instagram page, and we are also, we have a website for this show called changeitupradio.com. And that's a great place to hear former shows and to also get information about being a guest or a sponsor of this show. So check out changeitupradio.com. And if you want to learn more about me or my work, you can get all that info at paulashaw.com. And while you're there, be sure you grab my free gift, which is called 20 Things to Say and Not to Say to People in Pain. This is kind of a cheat sheet that I took from my book, Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say, because in those situations where we need to speak to somebody who's just experienced loss, maybe you've got a friend in Florida who just went through terrible loss with a hurricane, or maybe you know someone who just had a loved one die, or they lost their job. We need to be there to talk to them and support them, but sometimes it's really hard to know the right things to say. That little cheat sheet on my website will help you know things that are really helpful and healing to say, but also things that are not helpful to say, and that can be just as important to know. So please go to paulashaw.com and grab that cheat sheet for yourself. All right. My guest today is, I don't even know, there's so many words I can use to describe her, but for those of you who will see this show on video, you'll see that she's a luminescent angel. She is incredibly wise and shares in this show some great pearls of wisdom. Her name is Jeanine Thompson. She is an author, a speaker, and a transformational coach. Her new book is called 911 from Your Soul, and we talk about that book on this show. And what I love about the message that she shares with us is she talks about, can doing nothing help you live your life's greatest potential? And in a time of life when everybody is about doing, everybody is efforting, it's pretty radical to hear somebody say, doing nothing, just practicing stillness can help you become all that you are meant to be on every level. We get into that conversation, how that works, what is stillness, and what are the benefits? You know, what happens if you do move to working with stillness? So please hang on, because this conversation I think you're going to find just as illuminating as I did. So without further ado, here is Jeanine Thompson. Welcome everybody to my conversation with Jeanine Thompson. I am so looking forward to this because, as you can see, she's a lovely lady with amazing energy, and she has written a book that I want to know all about. And she, in spite of the fact that she looks like a sweet, lovely lady, she's come up with a pretty radical idea about doing nothing, which, Jeanine, I find a really, really interesting and radical idea in a time and a society where it seems to be all about doing, 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 or efforting, as my friend Steve Little calls it. So I have lots that I want to talk to you about, but I think it's always wonderful for my listeners to learn a little bit about where do you come from? What's the background story that led to this work that you're doing right now?
I love that question because I honestly believe that every experience we've had in our life is actually a critical piece of the mosaic or a stepping stone
I love that.
into the remembrance of who we are and who we're becoming. So as I look back, there were some key experiences when I was a child. I grew up with very strong women in my family, and I learned a great deal of intelligence and compassion and wisdom and strength from them.
Nice.
And I also learned a lot about over caretaking as well. They were strong
Mm.
and took care of everything. And so that was going to be something important for me to learn how to come into a dynamic balance with as I got
I
older.
love that because you did say over caretaking, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we women are great at that, aren't
Aren't
we?
we over functioning, over caretaking, and with the best intent, right? With the best
Yes,
loving
yes.
intent, but we actually get in the way of our highest becoming and
Mm,
others too, because
yeah.
every soul knows their own way. So we actually don't need to get in there and fix it all, you know?
I
So
love that idea.
yeah, so some key experiences along the way. I became a evidence-based psychotherapist in the first part of my career.
Hmm.
And that was came from a day when I went with my Aunt Judy to work with her. And she was a clinical psychotherapist. And
Oh.
in fifth grade, I decided that's it. I'm going to be a therapist. And of course, you don't really know what that is in fifth grade. I think I more wanted to be so many of the qualities that she emanated and walked in life as.
Hmm.
So lots of key stepping stones. But if we fast forward, I was an evidence-based psychotherapist treating anxiety disorders for a decade.
Ah.
So knew a lot about human development, cognitive behavioral strategies to help with anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders.
Hmm.
And then I went into the business world, and which is really funny because I never took a business class. I had no desire, it wasn't part of my career plan when I met with my career coach in college. And the intelligence of life actually arranges the
Mm.
perfect experiences and Earth School visitors along the way, and they help
I love
influence
that.
where we land. So
Hmm.
I became a Fortune 50 executive and was in the business arena for 12 years. And then I went on a search to figure out what was missing in my life. And that was the beginning of my 911.
Wow. So your book is called 911 from Your Soul. And I think let's just jump right into that. Now, in your own words, what is a 911 from your soul?
At the a 911 from your soul, for me, it literally was trying to figure out what was missing in my life.
Mm.
There was this persistent yearning, this persistent whisper at 3:33 in the morning saying, there's something more for you. There's something more for you. And I thought, my goodness, I just need to be more grateful. I've got a wonderful family, got a great job. I've got cool travel, the accoutrements. Like my life was good. Like what? Just be more grateful. Um,
Hmm.
but that wasn't the answer. And finally, when we don't listen to a deeper knowing, even though I didn't know what that whisper was at the time, because I was still
Yes.
very science oriented, it took me on a journey. And it brought me to yoga and Reiki, places that were the opposite of how I thought the world worked, who we were. You know, as a therapist, I was focused on our cognitions and our behavior, and all of a
Right.
sudden there was this whole new world of mind, body, soul, and spirit. And
Mhm.
it was during that 911 when I was lost. Like none of my other success strategies worked. No
Mm.
external expert could give me the answer or the
Right.
way. And it truly was learning to get to know parts of myself that I had forgotten and lost sight of along the way.
Mm. Oh, I love everything you're saying. You know, for me, it's interesting because you and I have so much in common. My original training was in alcohol and drug addiction counseling. And along the way, I discovered energy psychology. And energy psychology involves modalities like meridian tapping and
Yes.
working with the chakras that you know well. I'm also a Reiki master, and working with those energies that you learned about when you got into yoga and Reiki and all of that.
Mhm.
And for me, what I loved so much about it from moment one was that I watched people move so much faster. You know, when
Yes.
you start working on that energetic level, because we are energy, right? We look solid, but we're really more energy than we are solid matter. So the implementation of those different modalities, helping to shift people's energy, just made things happen so much more smoothly and quickly.
Much more quickly, right? It makes all the difference in the world where
Yeah.
we're thinking from and where we're creating from.
Yes.
You know, if we think it's
Yes.
just this earth view of matter,
Right.
it's going to be slower and we're going to have to slug through harder. And if we can learn about the essence and the energy that we are,
Mm,
we can supercharge, super speed, change in our life and create outcomes that are beyond what how we typically use the mind, what's
mhm.
available to us.
Absolutely. So tell us a little more about, I know you talk a lot in your book about stillness,
Mhm.
this concept of doing nothing. And as I was saying when we began, that's so counterintuitive to what we see in our world all the time and even what we're encouraged to do, right? Because that executive you were, who was probably going and doing and all of that, was much more what we are conditioned to do, what we are supposed to look like if we're going to be successful. And
Yeah.
then you did this radical about face. So, talk to us about that. And what is stillness to you?
Yeah. So I couldn't agree with you more. The idea of nothingness and stillness is absolutely antithetical. It's the opposite to what you're taught. Idle time is unproductive time. If you've got a problem, fix it. Use your
Right.
big brain and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I learned about the power of breath and stillness, I was very resistant. I thought, first of all, I'm in a plane 200,000 plus miles a year internationally for my job.
Mm.
I was a single mom and I didn't have time to be still. That was my story.
I
So,
love
if
that.
any of you out there have that story, we're going to have to do a little bit of narrative shift here. But I say that because I understand. I understand why it seems
Mm.
like it'd be the least helpful thing to do.
Yeah.
You're hurting or stuck or confused or sad
Mm-hmm.
or overwhelmed. But how I view stillness is actually a shift in awareness. So
Mm.
we Most of us spend our time in our head, in those 70,000 thoughts a day that the data says that we have. And when we're doing stillness, it's about shifting your awareness from your busy brain to the core of your being. So I always tell people, put one hand on heart center, one near your belly, close your eyes, and really feel the breath, like literally feel your belly, your diaphragm expand, feel it contract. And that to me is stillness. It is a shift in awareness from your head to your heart's intelligence. And it is the most powerful gateway to the expanded potentiality of who you really are.
I so love that. You know, my first book was on the chakras. And so that chakra, especially the belly chakra, it is, I don't know what's with my voice today, forgive me. It is where we receive from the higher realms, you know. Although we tend to think of our crown more in relation to that, but the belly, and it's also the chakra of the self.
Mhm,
So I love that you tune in to that one. And of
mhm,
course, the heart is
mhm,
where our feelings are centered.
mhm.
And so putting hands, I love that idea. I meditate every morning, but I think I'm going to start adding that piece of just focusing, you know, the hands on the heart and the belly. That's beautiful.
It is, you know, and you understand this well, but it might be new for the listeners. It certainly was for me. We follow touch. If anybody ever bumps into our arm, you know, we turn our head to notice. So it's a really useful practice, not only to shift the awareness from the busy brain into the core, into the seat of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it
Mm-hmm.
helps you when those thoughts pop up. It helps you reground and say, no, not right now,
Yeah.
noted. And then you just go back to the breath.
Noted. I loved that. I read that somewhere on your, maybe on your website, that
Yeah.
when those because you know what people say to me every time, I can't meditate. My brain just won't shut off. And so that is a common
Yes.
fallacy or thought that people have. I can't do it because my brain is so busy. But I love that idea of, okay, noted. Now let's go back to the to belly, back to where we were.
Yes. And we must in the beginning, especially if you might be resistant like I was, convinced that not so sure there was going to be value to this, not so sure I could do it. The success when you begin is that you began. And
Mm.
if you have to say 15 times, noted, sometimes I'll get playful and say, my goodness, awfully busy today. And then I retouch. And
Love it.
and I just keep doing that
Mhm.
and learning to be with my breath. Stillness is not always silent. In fact, we can
Mm.
learn to be still in the eye of the storm as we get better with this. So I think we got to change some of our narratives around what stillness is.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that helps you soften or empty the busy brain
Mm-hmm.
and connect with your inner wisdom. You might do that through breathing, as I just described. You might be one that actually prefers it to empty your busy brain through something active. Maybe you like a freeing run, or you love to paint, or you love to move your body and dance, and
Mm-hmm.
you allow yourself to lose those thoughts. Or maybe you're one that wants to be held in the arms of nature
Mm-hmm.
and to be swept away to a place of expanded possibility with the, crisp, fresh air or the beauty in the
Yeah.
trees or the, water that you're hearing.
So great that you offer these other ways of doing stillness because not everybody is good at just sitting.
Mhm.
For years, I used to do Qigong, which is sort of like Tai Chi. It's a movement meditation because I just could not sit.
Mhm.
Now I can, but it took me a while to get there. And, you know, when I'm working with clients too, I'll often tell them, take a gratitude walk. Just
Mhm.
go in silence and see all the things out there you can be grateful for. And
Mhm.
that's a nice way of giving them movement, but also helping them ground, you know, and move into something more like stillness as you describe it.
Yes, I love that. And and what I'd like to offer to the listeners is let's do the beauty of the and. So you can use nature, the gratitude walk, you
Mm-hmm.
can use something more active like music
Mm-hmm.
or art or lifting weights, running, whatever it might be. And I also invite you every day for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, just in the beginning, to retrain yourself that everyone can be still.
Mm.
It is our essence. It actually is the truth of who we are. And we just have to disconnect from our human view that it's impossible or we're too busy or we can't do it. We can, and it just might not be, your favorite thing initially, but if you stick with it and you view every period as an success, I promise you, what awaits you is a trove of wisdom, of intelligence, of answers that you're searching for that no one else, nobody on earth can have except you.
Mm. Oh, that is so beautiful. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break, but I have a million more questions. So we will be right back. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and I am talking today with Jeanine Thompson. And we are talking about stillness and the whole concept of doing nothing and what that can do for you. So, if you missed the beginning of this show, you definitely want to go back and hear that after the show ends because there's some wonderful pearls of wisdom that Jeanine has shared with us already. Jeanine, you know, we've been talking about getting out of your head and
Mhm.
into your heart, really, into your body, into your core. And I'm reminded of the funniest line I once heard a woman say at an Al Anon meeting many years ago. She said, you know, I know that when I'm into my head, I am behind enemy lines.
I love it.
Always love that.
Yes,
But
yes.
it's so true, isn't it? Because when you're in your head, what I hate the most about when I'm in my head is the shoulds. I'm
Mhm.
constantly shoulding on myself, you know, because all the things my head tells me I should be doing
Mhm.
instead of sitting still, instead
Mhm.
of going inside. Because my goodness, what am I accomplishing? What am I getting done? Right?
Mhm.
So, you have talked with us now about the importance of this stillness. What do people get out of being still?
Yeah. So there are a number of benefits, but clarity is one of the primary
Oh,
benefits.
that's huge.
It,
Huge.
it's a noisy world right
Mm-hmm.
now. Everybody's got a point of view,
Yeah.
and it can be hard to discern your own truth.
Mm-hmm.
So silence actually isn't silent. It becomes a love note from your highest self and from all
Mm.
that is on your next right action or maybe the next best solution. And so it is the seeds of everything that you're looking for. So I would say discernment and clarity of your truth, number one.
Mm.
Access, we've been talking about as brilliant as our mind is, we now know from the data we've got three brains: a gut brain, a heart brain, a head brain.
Oh, yes.
And they each have a role to play, but it is truly in the heart's intelligence and in the core of our being where um, different solutions, expanded solutions that aren't available to us in the way we use our human mind. So that access is everything. Presence. I think that when you just pause, even for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, you get to become aware of the beauty. Life is sending you love notes all day long. Like, I think the universe is so clever, and it's constantly trying to get your attention. Some conversation you might overhear, a breeze outside, a quote you run into, a conversation like this. There's little whispers. And we go later, ooh, I knew that.
Yes.
We had a sense. We just didn't listen to it because the data didn't, we had no proof,
Yes.
So I think that's important. I think when you're in stillness, it gives you a chance to align with the best of who you are. There's a centered pause. And in that centered pause, we get to choose differently. We get to choose higher quality thoughts. We get to be led by a higher intelligence. We get to choose our next right action. And they can be loved based. And most people don't listen that way. They're in a conversation thinking about what's their point of view on this and what do they want to say next. And there's a brilliance, excuse me, that unfolds in that pause of conscious choice. Yeah, I just rest and renew. We're getting bombarded with information all day long. It's amazing what happens when you close your eyes for just a minute. Close those eyes, hand on heart center, one hand on the belly, and feel that breath. And as you feel that vital life force, the very gift that keeps you alive, you feel held by life itself and held by love.
Now, just for our listeners to be clear, an experience of stillness, or shall we say a little session of stillness, is not the same as a power nap, right?
No, as delicious as those can be, right? They definitely have a role in the continuum
Yes.
of our health. I love naps. No, this is a time that you are deliberately. I love for people minimally to start your day this way, even before you get out of bed, if you can. And then throughout the day, I have my clients actually do it before each interaction. And they're like, Jeanine, we're in back-to-back meetings. I'm busy. I got to pick up the kids. I got to do this. And I know, but 30 seconds isn't going to make or break
Totally.
it, but it will make or break who you show up as and what kind of impact and wake you leave behind you. Because we do in every interaction.
It's so true. And, looking at everything as I do from that energy perspective, in that 30 seconds, you're really shifting your energy.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be 20 minutes with your legs crossed and oming or any of that, though that's wonderful too. But in that 30 seconds where you just go inside, just breathe, before I start every show, I do that and I set an intention for the show, because what we know about energy is it's random, but we can tell it how we want it to show up. And that's the beauty of setting an intention. And so it's no more than 30 seconds when I do that. And yet it shifts everything.
Shifts everything. It shifts how other people, our energy introduces us before our physical presence
Good
arrives.
point. Great
Right?
point.
And so you've already set the container,
Yes.
for meaning and beauty or whatever your intention was. We are so incredibly powerful. So that's what I learned during my 911. I had to lose myself before I could actually remember who I really was.
Wow, that's a
Who I
great
was
statement. Great
becoming.
statement. Yeah. You had to lose yourself before you could remember who you really were. that just makes such sense because most of us get conditioned by our parents, our
Mhm.
schools, our churches, wherever we grow up. And so I don't know, I can't tell you how many times I hear clients say, I don't know who I am. I'm
Yeah,
who they told me I should be, or I'm who
absolutely.
they thought I should be.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things I love about your work. When I read that 911 from your soul, I thought it sounded like, oh yeah, I've been going and doing and doing it all the way everybody else told me I should. And then
Mm.
you get this sort of little knock. Hello, this is
Yes.
not who you are. You need to find that being. And I can see where if we don't stop the hamster wheel that we're on
Yeah.
and take that time to be still and really go in there and say, who am I? What matters to me?
Yeah.
What's important to me? Wow. It's mind boggling how few people actually do that.
Right. And life is trying to reach all of us right now. I believe we're in a global 911. I
Mm,
know so many people right now that are going through their own 911s, and it looks different. Mine showed up as a persistent yearning and restlessness. Something was
mm,
off and missing.
uh-huh.
For others, maybe some part of their familiar identity got shaken or stripped away, tipped
Yes.
upside down, a relationship, health, finances, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
For others, there's not the same juice. They wake up in the morning, it's just not the fire. They're doing everything, all the trappings of success. They followed the rules, they executed. It should be good, and yet it's not.
Hmm.
For others, it's the big questions in life. You know, what's the purpose of life? What
Right.
who am I, as you said? And
Hmm.
so a 911 can show up in many different ways, and that's not surprising. We are nearly 8 billion lights of expression in the
Right.
world. So
Right.
there's not a single, presentation, but at the core of all of them, you are being asked to reconnect with parts of yourself you've lost sight of, forgotten
Hmm.
along the way,
Hmm.
or maybe even never even knew you had.
Yeah.
We have all these hidden gifts. Maybe you're being asked to use your voice in a new way. I was being asked to help people discover their potential in a new way.
Hmm.
From
Hmm.
psychotherapy to business to coaching, at the core, it's all been about helping people live the highest and best possibility of who they really are and who they came here to be. Maybe you're asked to develop the quality of compassion or connection or
Hmm.
oneness. But there's always intelligence to every experience in life. They're not random, they
Hmm.
are not punishing. Um, they're really an invitation for you as an individual or through you for the collective well being and uplifting of humanity.
And I'm sure, you made a good point earlier. It's not always an experience that shows up that you love or
Yes,
that's
no.
pleasant to go through. I
Mm-mm.
find myself thinking about so many people I've seen on the news that just went through Hurricane Ian
Mhm.
and people in Florida whose total lives have been upheaved. And I know when you're going through something, one woman that I saw in an interview had lost her home in a fire here in California. So they packed up, went to Florida, bought a boat, lived on their boat, and Hurricane Ian destroyed their boat.
Mm.
Now that's a tough one, isn't that, Jeanine? Like, if you were to sit down to coach her,
Mhm.
what do you say? Because that's when a person gets into a God hates me. God does not know I'm on the planet. God does not love me.
Yeah.
What would you do with someone like that whose life had been through such upheaval like that twice?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that we will never have a good enough answer of the why that will
Mm,
satisfy the human mind.
good point.
And so how I go about that work is teaching them to connect with the wisdom of, I believe we are spiritual beings, just traversing Earth School in wonder suits. So detaching from the wonder suit and actually learning to rest inside until the direction, the answer, the wisdom bubbles up. So I help create space for them to do that. But too often and I might have in my old work tried to reframe it from a cognitive perspective, and there's value in that. But during times where there's never going to be a good enough why, we probably will never wrap our human mind around how could this possibly happen twice.
Yes.
But if we can come in and develop a relationship with our soul, it will become clear. And I can't even describe it. It happens miraculously if we're willing to drop the why for right now and rest in initially they might just need strength. They might just need strength. They might need an outlet, to grieve because it's loss. So it kind of everybody comes in at a different place, of course. But ultimately, we're wanting to understand what this is inviting us to.
Oh, that's really beautifully put. Because I think, I do a lot of work with grieving people. And I loved that statement you made that there can never be a good enough why, particularly when people lose children or there's some horrible tragedy that happens. They can be blocked from ever finding a place of peace again and healing if they are obsessed with the why.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I really like that the way you said, set it aside for now, because it blocks what else can come that can actually heal and make sense out of it all.
And it also, at least from my personal experience, when I was 15 and 16, I watched one of my best friends die. And a year later, a coworker who I admired greatly and worked with, and she was close to our family, was killed in a car accident. And at 15 and 16, I can tell you, there was nothing anybody could say to me that was going to make okay. The time, it'll get better in time, or you got a new angel in the sky. I mean, I heard all sorts of things, but honestly, and they were all, there was truth to all of that love that was shared with me. And yet, there really was a getting to know those two incidences. Part of what shaped who I am was a love for hospice. For example, I've done hospice volunteering on and off for 30 years. Wow. And I believe that was shaped by recognizing that life could shift in a blink of an eye, and wanting those that had time to prepare, because both of my friends were a sudden loss. There was no prepping, so that shaped my love of life. Like every day I say, okay, how can I fall in love with life today? And
that's beautiful.
I think that's because I realized it could change in a blink of an eye, right?
What do you do when a client is in just a total state of fear as a result of maybe these kinds of things we're talking about?
Yeah. So I always distinguish, and I want to make this discernment for the listeners as well. So if somebody's in immediate trauma, I will refer them to somebody who is either practicing therapy or doing groups with the type of trauma that they're going through, because that's out of my expertise now. And I believe that they need more immersive help in the
Yeah.
moment, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But if they come to me and they're, of course, still deeply sad or have a level of trauma, one of the first things that we work on is embodiment. How do we actually get back into our body through breathing exercises, through grounding? We've got to create a place of safety in our system. And even though you and I know energetically things can change like that, when you're feeling, like you're in the dark, you don't know how you're going to move forward, what the next step is, we need to create some safety in the body and help our parasympathetic and sympathetic systems come into balance.
Beautiful. Beautiful. A dear friend of mine created a nonprofit called Comfort Cubs. And Marcella Johnson's her name, and she lost her child. And one of the things that she realized, this was at birth, that her arms were longing to hold a baby, and she could find no comfort until she went to pick up a pot in her garden, and it was about the weight of a newborn baby.
Oh
And
my
she
goodness.
got this idea to create a little cub that could be snuggled, but it's weighted. It's about 5 pounds, this bear. And when you hold it, it is incredibly comforting. It's that bringing the physical in. I think you're so right on the money with that. Bringing the physical in can bring comfort to the emotions, to the heart.
And to give them space to breathe, because
Yes.
part of what is scary, of course, for people is the emotions feel so strong, and they're afraid if they allow more of them, they won't
Yes.
stop,
Exactly.
And so to me, it creates some, first of all, you just feel better physically when we can get your system in rhythm. But also, we need a place to process all of our emotions. Most of us have been taught that emotions are good or they're bad. They're not proper or
Right.
they're proper. And I don't think that they're any of those things. I think that they are um, neutral messengers of love.
Wow. Neutral messengers of love.
Uh,
That's great. Taking the label off them kind of gives you permission to just have them, to feel
just
them, to
have them.
express
Yep.
them, right?
Yeah. And we know energetically that when we can let some of that out, love will fill every cell. Love will come into the corners that you allow that to be released. And it's just a way of honoring yourself. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be overwhelmed. It's okay to be sad. We don't want to live there though. We don't want to spend all day there going, oh, I'm honoring myself. No, then we're feeding it too much, or potentially, depending upon where you are in your cycle of growth and death and birth and renewal. Because we go through all those cycles every year, just like the seasons.
It occurs to me that a lot of what you're teaching is based on self love. And most of us are not very good at that, Jeanine. We're not very good at, as you and I were discussing earlier, especially women. We'll do for everybody else, but to take that time for ourselves is tough. How do you encourage people to move into that place of self love so they can access stillness and some of these other things we've been talking about?
I probably begin in a slightly different place than many do. I begin in a conversation about what are their thoughts about what animates life. What is love? Some of those bigger conversations, because I think that can change the whole nature of what is self-love. Because what if we didn't even have to define it and just said it is who we are? So
Mm.
then, therefore, if we are that divine consciousness that is pure always at all times, irrespective of our messy choices, irrespective of our messy moments where the best of us was not on full display. Um, if there was a
Well put.
worthiness to us, if we weren't those experiences that happened to us, if they couldn't touch the purity, if it was untouchable, unshakable, then what might a loving act look like? And then we start to get different answers.
Yeah. Oh, that makes total sense. I love that. Now, in your book, you talk about the 7 principles of soul solution.
Uh-huh.
Before we run out of time, which we're going to very shortly, can you give us a little peek at what that's about?
Yes, these are the 7 principles that I would love for each of you to have on your walls, in your hands, in your heart, because they are 7 key spiritual principles that will empower you to allow the truth of who you are to take the helm of your life. And it helps us reconcile this, what I call the earth view of who we are, because I think we're human and we're divine, we're visible and we're invisible. So it helps us reconcile, like, what's an earth view of mine, but what's the soul view of mine. So it helps us live the beauty of the and there's very practical. I think this book, I was guided to write it in a very hopefully enjoyable way. It's an easy read, but also helps you reconcile the fullness of being a spiritual being in a wondersuit. So these 7 principles, I'll give you an example. I am in service to life, and life is in service to me.
Oh, lovely.
So when we go back to your example and all of the tragedies in Florida right now, not in this moment. They probably just right now need time to honestly grieve and be with that. But there'll be a time coming up where there's some practices in there that help us move away from the human understanding to know that all acts do become life in service to us. Sometimes the most radical paths of love, the people who become our guiding lights, our hope, our inspiration, are people who've been through really tough stuff.
Yes.
And yet they found a way to keep living forward in the most remarkable ways, and they become our teachers. But I would hold on to that when I was in the middle of my darkness and these 7 principles dropped in. I'm like, I am in service to life. That one I got more like, I was a therapist, I'm a mom. I could, pick up garbage on the road. I found lots of ways, cooking, loving, reading, to be in service to life. But I needed to rest in the darkness and allow divine consciousness in its own perfect timing, which certainly wasn't mine. I was like, chop, chop, let's get on with this.
I understand that.
But to whisper the intelligence of how life was in service through this particular inflection point on my path to becoming.
Lovely. So lovely. And where can people get your book?
Yes. So 911 from Your Soul at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or go to your favorite local bookshop and tell them it's in the Ingram catalog. If you want to support your local community, let's do that. So you can find the book there. You can find me at my website, JeanineThompson.net, or on Instagram _Jeanine Thompson _. And I'd love to hear from you. If there was something today that moved you, or you're curious about, or sparked a hopper of consideration, you're not quite sure today, but I'm willing to put it in the hopper of consideration, let me know. We're here to serve you.
And if people are interested in your coaching, they'll find that information on the website also?
They will indeed. coaching, speaking at JeanineThompson.net.
Beautiful. Jeanine, I thank you with all my heart for gracing my show today. You are a luminescent being, and I'm so happy to have met you. I hope to continue this relationship in the future because you're just fabulous. So
Thank you.
thank
Right
you.
back.
Oh, thank
Sorry,
you,
right
dear.
back at you. As I told you in the beginning, I was so excited. You have the most pure, loving, radiant energy and a wisdom. So it's an honor to be with you and all of your listeners. So many thanks.
And mine to you. And to my listeners, thank you for being with us today. Remember, you can hear this show on any major podcast platform, including Podopolo, which is my current favorite, and it's one of the most unique platforms out there. And remember to subscribe to the show so you'll know when we've got a new one that's posted. And we always love it when you like us and let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. There must be so much that you're thinking right now about today. This show has been so loaded with fabulous pearls of wisdom. So I'm grateful to our wonderful guest and to all of you for being with us. So until next week here on Change It Up Radio, take care of yourselves and spend some time in stillness. All righty. Bye-bye.